So the yellow HJ47, we're here. I'm working on it. All right. This will be like the second episode, I think. Because in the first one, I took everything apart, disassembled, all that goodness. So it's really as bare as you can possibly get it. So in this video, I've got to do all the rust, just the rust. I'm not doing any priming or sanding, just the rust. So obviously this is a really good version of a 40 series cab, like not much rust at all. Like in comparison to the other cabs that I've had, like this one here or the one out there that's going to the tip. This one's fantastic. So what have we got? We've got a little dint and cut in the front guards, a hole up the top where the bonnet holder thing goes, and then under that guard it's got like a bunch of rust underneath, like surface stuff. I don't know about these the side steps. I'm sure there's going to be rust under there. And then in the back, so the passenger side at the back, that's the absolute worst. You can see rust from the outside. It's just, and you know it's gone right in there. You know it's just like absolutely destroyed inside that panel, or else you wouldn't be able to see it outside. So there's that for the rust, but also back here are the worst, like dents. Like there's this massive, I have no idea what could cause this. It's in such a weird place, but it's like, I don't know, something's really smashed here. Then there's one in the roof on the driver's side, and then your surface rust just that can be taken away with the wire wheel. And that's all that like I can see at the moment, but I got to get in and take it all out and try and find how bad it is. I'm going to start getting through all of this. I'm going to start passenger side, work around the car. Just, I don't know, to have some sort of order to this situation. That's what I'm going to start. I'm going to move around and see how we go. So I was going to just play the start of the repairs here, but as I went to put the footage from my camera onto the computer, the first few clips wouldn't open and they won't go into the editing software. They have corrupted. So I will bridge the gap with a voiceover of some clips from my phone. I started off down the bottom with the little dent down there with a hammer, just banging it out. That was pretty much all I could do for that bottom one. Then I got some sandpaper just to make sure when I put the etch primer on that it would actually stick to the panel. Then obviously got the wire brush, it's an essential. Grinded out the whole cut because it was a full split in the metal, so I needed to make sure all of the rust was gone. Then got the welder onto it and welded it from top to bottom and kept hitting it with a hammer and clamping it. Then I just got the grinder on it, grinded it down smooth, and then put some etch primer on it so it wouldn't continue to rust after that. Then it was up to the one on the top, that where the bonnet hinge holder thing sits. So I got a bit of paper, traced out the repair area on the paper, then traced that out onto a bit of metal and made a few cuts, then cut all the actual rust out on the area, fit it up, it fit pretty well, and then put a few tacks down on the welder, and then cleaned it up a bit with the grinder, and then just welded the entire thing all the way around, making sure not to overheat it in any one spot so that it wouldn't completely warp it. And that was about it. Now you're all caught up. So I've already had to whip out the welder. The welder that I use is a Unimig Viper 185. I probably bought it about 2 years ago and I've welded a lot of stuff with it. I've welded heaps of panels. I only ever used to do gasless welding, but now I use gas with a 0.6 wire. The wire is, I'm not sure, it's some sort of, so I'm just cutting it right back, welding it, grinding over the top, and that's pretty much it. There won't be any super crazy welding I'll have to do, but that's just what I have. So I'm using the most simple method here, just a bit of paper, trace it out, cut it out, get the sheet metal that I have. It's just like galvanized sheet metal from Bunnings. Well, 1.3 I think is pretty good because the 0.9 is too thin and the 1.6 is too thick, way too thick. But I use 1.3, one of the all-time great thicknesses for sheet metal, and it works great. Anyway, so get that, put it on the template, weld it, grind it, and I'm not doing any crazy shaping or anything like that. Like if I needed to do that, I'd buy the whole new panel like this. You can buy the whole new panels, but with this one, it'll pretty much just be flat shapes. But again, very easy, no like reproduction panels or anything like that. Just standard cutting and welding in. So now I'm going to tackle what I imagine is the worst of the rust. It doesn't look super bad from the outside, but I've done enough of these rust jobs to know that if you can see it from the outside, that means that it is absolutely destroyed whatever is on the inside. I'm lucky there's not that much for it to destroy on this old car. The panels are very simple, but it can still do a lot of damage, that rust. So I've got to first get on with the wire wheel, then cut a bit open, and then just keep cutting it open until I get right to the back. Well, I was right about it being the worst of the rust, wasn't I? This rust is like, it's weird. Like, well, I guess it's not weird, but it's gone in between these two panels here, like where the top comes down and where the bottom is. There's two panels, and it's completely rusted in between there. So I'm actually going to get in there to put some rust converter on, which I'll get to. And then also it's completely come in and like disintegrated that post pillar thing that's in there, which that's probably going to be the hardest part to actually fix, because getting in there with a grinder is almost impossible. Anyway, so I'll get in there and actually pull this panel up. So this is the rust converter that I'm going to be using. I've never actually used this before. I've used other like rust converters and stuff, but this stuff is apparently really good. I just used it the other day on another rust job and it seemed to work really, really well. I don't have any long-term results, but it is a rust converter, so it will get rid of the rust. But apparently this stuff is 6 or 7 times more effective than most other rust converters. This stuff, you Y-wheel it and then you put this rust converter on it and it kills that rust, neutralizes it so it won't come back. Pretty simple concept. With this, hopefully, it'll never come back. From the little results that I have, it looks really, really good. But I'll show you what I do up here and then the results of that. Look at all that. It like turns it black pretty much. And you can see that it pretty much kills it. Like there's no more rust there. It's a pretty lengthy process with this one. It's, you put it on and then you reapply after 6 hours. And then once it's all dry, you have to put primer on top of it. You can't just leave it there. So yeah, you gotta let it sit for 6 hours and then come back and do it again and then wait for it to dry. That's what the instructions say. And it's always good to follow the instructions. So what I'm doing here is putting a bit of etch primer in there. That will actually seal the now rust converted area. You have to put some sort of coating on it. So I've got this etch primer in a tin just so I can get heaps in there, because I want to get enough in there to where it really seals it, gets into all the holes. And a spray can you can do if it's like accessible, but in here I think it's easier with a paintbrush. And I'm just getting heaps of it in there, and I'll let it dry and then do another coat as well, and just get it absolutely everywhere that you can. Just like with the rust remover itself, you want to get all of this to cover all of that rust converter that you've put on. So I waited that 6 hours, I put another coat on. This is probably another 6 or another day after, and it's all dried. You can feel, you can touch it and it's not wet anymore. And so now I'm putting the top coat on, which is this primer. And it's really important, this part, because when I put those panels back down, I want to make sure it doesn't rust in there anymore. So as far as I'm concerned, that is all of the rust done and dealt with. I got up the top and did the same thing with the roof, just Y-wheeled it back and put some converter on it. It was just that bit in the roof there. There's nothing else. I cannot find any other rust that really needs to be dealt with. It's all been stripped back, had rust converter put on it, and the primer. As I suspected, the worst part was this back bit in the weird little passenger side panel back here, but that's all dealt with now. It's been taken back completely all the way. You saw me put that rust converter on and then the primer on top, and I'll be able to put those panels back together and it'll be all good. And so I think that has to be maybe even a world record, definitely a record for me, of how long it's taken to repair all the rust on a car. I mean, I've had 6 months done on my 80 series, took me that long to repair all the rust. So it just sort of shows and proves how easy it is when you get one of these cars without rust in it. I mean, that's like usually half the job. When I get a car, I allocate half the time for the rust repairs, but nah. So now the rust is done, the actual rust itself. The next part is the bodywork and all the panels and stuff, which is usually the worst part. So now I've got to go in where all the rust was and where I've cut all that back. I now have to weld that up, put patches over where I've cut it open, and also fix all the dents, like the massive dent in the back panel that I showed you, the dents down the bottom. But anyway, now that this rust is done, I will see you on the next one, which should be the panels and the bodyworks. So I'll see you then.